Cali Joe and friends from North Carolina. Cali is present but unavailable. With the recent episode of violence, his family retired in Maine, northeast of Lewistown, where his daughter recently returned from 2 weeks ago. To minimize personal bias, Cali Joe has granted that I address the root cause, issues, and solutions. Tough on crime should be considered upon state and federal agencies with proper accountability and citizen compliance boards. This episode comes in the aftermath of the military failing Vanessa Gillian, leading to her death, and another suicide. Since then, the promised structured changes have failed, and our Lewistown, Maine situation could have been prevented. This isn't about pointing fingers at federal or state government, nor about depriving innocent citizens of rights, nor creating laws to create stricter sentences and punishments while padding the pockets of criminal lawyers. That's the benefit of being tough on crime. Good evening. John Wymock here, again to speak with you, the listeners. And as always, it's an honor to have you listen to me rant. Thanks for listening. Today I will be speaking about the increase in gun violence in America. Is the rise in gun violence due to the guns or the individuals using them? As we know, gun violence is an issue that needs to be dealt with by the federal and state governments. But first, what is the answer? Arm more Americans or disarm them? The quick and easy answer is to restrict all guns. Then you will have no gun violence. Is this correct? Well, not necessarily. Individuals still find ways to use illegal things. An example of this is illegal drugs. Even with all the laws and restrictions prohibiting them, individuals continue to use and sell them. One might say that is not a good example, even though drug overdoses is and kills a substantial amount of individuals every year and is one of the leading causes of death. In 2017, there were 70,237 deaths from overdoses, and the number is almost 2 times the amount of gun-related deaths, which is at 39,773. Now, these stats are from 2017, so they more than likely have risen slightly. The opioid epidemic has been ravaging our cities. Both of these numbers are very high. Drugs being illegal has changed nothing. So it could be said then, if you take all the guns, then only lawbreakers and the government will possess them. Another example is death by motor vehicle. Again, in 2017, sorry about the outdated stats, accidents took 169,936 deaths, making it the 3rd highest death rate in America. In Florida recently, an individual hit and killed 4 college students due to his negligent operation of a vehicle. Since these deaths continue to happen, do we take all the motor vehicles and go back to walking? Well, America can't, because we are dependent on personal transportation. So the question still stands, how do we fix gun violence? One way is to build up our dilapidated mental health infrastructure, start redirecting federal funds into mental health awareness and new treatment strategies. A current example of how the mental health system and government failed us was a mass shooting in Maine. The alleged perpetrator had mental health issues. He was admitted into a mental health facility over the summer and subsequently released. Why did he still have access to firearms, especially after allegedly making comments about shootings prior to this incident? This was an incident, a tragedy that should have been prevented. Not only did the government know about him, Other people did too, which begs the question, how do we stop individuals who are not fit to handle weapons from obtaining them? This question is debated between liberal and conservative camps everywhere. So I propose better mental health screenings and evaluations for prospective gun owners and individuals who show symptoms of a mental health crisis.
This call will be monitored and recorded.
So instead of sending billions of dollars in aid packages all over the world, let's take some of that capital and invest it in our mental health system and our future. For one, a better reporting system for individuals who witness others possibly experiencing a mental health crisis. Then for a time, restrict their ability to obtain firearms after proper evaluation and treatments for the individual who was supposedly having a crisis. But also, after the treatment, continue contact with the individual so professionals can determine if they should have their rights back. Interestingly, the government has programs like this, but they don't issue orders to take the weapons. When I was in the Marine Corps, if there was an administrative action taken on a Marine for a crime or whatever it may be, the first thing we take him was the individual's weapons cards. In other words, the Marine loses his ability to obtain his weapon from the armory. Now, in the public sector, for this to be constitutional, it would have to have due process and procedural safeguards. But please don't take what I'm saying as you need to do this, you need to do that, because I'm not. Especially after I used weapons in the Corps and in my crime. I feel, personally, that I was not given the proper mental health treatment after I came back from the war. Mental health and gun violence, more times than not, go hand in hand. But not always. Some would like to say tough on crime and longer sentences for offenders. And giving perpetrators who use a firearm in the commission of a crime more prison exposure reduces the risk of more gun violence in the future. These statements do not change gun violence, because most individuals who commit crimes with a firearm are first-time offenders who purchased a weapon legally. This puts us back at square one. So mental health professionals should have more interaction with gun owners to help reduce offenses against the public. Not just throw the offender away for longer periods. Preventing crime is the goal, not acting retrospectively after the crime is already committed. An example of this could be when an individual purchases a firearm, they should have to be evaluated by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Or maybe this just for high-capacity assault weapons. Another way could be you have to own a certain type of firearm for so many amount of months or years before you can own a high-capacity weapon. I do understand that these are all constitutional questions, but they need to be asked in order to protect the ones we love from unwarranted gun violence. I mean, for one, an individual under 21 should not be able to own a high-capacity weapon anyways. And also, why does the private sector need high-capacity assault weapons? Rifles and pistols can accomplish hunting and home protection just fine. The threat of a Red Dawn or mainland attack on the U.S. shores is very unlikely, given the strength of the U.S. military. These proposed solutions I present are not the end-all, be-all to our problems. They are potential steps in the right direction. Along with mental health, there are other cultural issues that promote gun violence that need to be spoken about. These issues will be addressed at another time, since they are not a direct contributor. In conclusion, I feel there needs to be more investment in Americans' mental health infrastructure, especially pertaining to firearm owners. Heavy restrictions on high-capacity assault weapons with more hands-on training. Fire ownership training, contrary to popular belief, saves lives. just like training in the military keeps troops vigilant. Along with the mental health aspect of training, all the constitutional rights provided need to be protected. This to prevent government overreaching, which happens from time to time. If you are listening, please be safe out there and think before you act. Safety is paramount, and preservation of life must be the number one most important goal of any society. Thanks for listening, and remember, Parvus er principio magnus est in fine. A small mistake in the beginning is a big one in the end. Thomas Aquinas. Have a good night.